Hey there folks, it's me Zenith20 here, and this video we'll be making a word counter with nothing else but CSS, JavaScript and HTML. So let's get into it. As you can see, I have an empty web page over here and we're going to get right into it. First of all, we'll be starting with our index.html. In the index.html, we'll be having the basic markup. Now in the body, we'll be having a container. This will be a container div which will wrap our entire application. Within this, we'll be having a text area, which will be the actual word counter place, where we will write our words and it will give us all of the statistics on another panel. And the second one will be the statistics. As I previously mentioned, this will be holding all of our stats or the statistics for our words. Now, within these statistics, we'll be having an H2, of course, for the statistics title. We'll be having a bit of separation. Then we'll having the title for the number of letters, which we'll name as letters stat. Number of words, which will be word stat. Number of sentences, which will name sentences stat. Number of paragraphs, which will name paragraph stat, and so on. Similarly, we'll take the statistics for the reading time and the speaking time. And lastly, we'll be having the keywords list in which we'll be storing all of the most used keywords in our application. Make sure that you follow the same classes because we'll be using these classes to refer these elements in the index.js. Now, if you look at our web page, we have the basic markup right over here, which is looking quite bland. So let's add some styling to it. Now, in the styling, we're going to have a couple of things. First of all, we'll be having the background of the body to be set to the dark tone, and we'll be giving it a general font family and margin of 0 pixels. In the container, which we had set in the index.html, we'll be giving it the width of 100 view width and a height of 100 view width to entirely cover the web page. And then we'll be setting our text area. Now, the important thing over here in the text area is the color variable, which will be used to create the nice rainbow effect, which we'll do in a minute. The rest is all of the styles in which we'll be setting the width and the height to as respective ones. And we're going to set the background as well to a dark tone, which you'll see why in a minute. We'll set the color of the font to a white color as that's the best contrast against the dark background. And we'll be having no outline so that it does not mess up with our styles. Next, in the statistics, we'll be having the similar styles to the text area. We'll be having the same box shadow, border radius, and the background of hashtag 151515. And we'll be giving it a little bit of letter spacing to make sure everything is readable and legible. Now we're going to have a bit of the styling on the H2 and H3 tags. We're going to make it display effects and all of the little styles which will help us to align it much more easily. And in the HR tag, we want to make sure that we're going to have a nice border with it. So we're going to remove the default styles and add a border color of white and border radius of 10 pixels. Next, with the H4, we're going to give it the width of fit content and a padding of 10 pixels. And lastly, for the paragraph tags, we'll be using the display inline. This one is really important because if you'll see the effect of it, you'll see it later in the keywords list, where making paragraph display inline will make sure that the keywords which we'll be adding later into our statistics will not increase or will not go out of the box of the keywords list. So they will be clipped. Coming down, we're having the keywords list, and in the keywords list, we're going to remove all of the default stylings on the list, and we're also going to do some styling on the li tags inside it. Nothing fancy over here. Next, in the span of the li, we're going to take the first chart and we're going to make its width to 200 pixels, and we're going to make sure that it will have an ellipse, that it won't have any ellipses. This is because our li tag will consist out of two things. It will be consisting out of the actual word which is being repeated so on, and it will consist of the percentage or the number of times our word is being used in the paragraph which we have written. Text overflow over here, make sure that the text does not go out of the box and it is cut off. Lastly, we'll be having the WebKit scroll bar and the thumb to be set to a nice style so that it can fit with the dark background. Now, if we check our HTML, we can see that things are coming together. We're already having the red background, but no red background on the statistics. We'll do so in a minute when we'll put JavaScript into our application. All right, so let's get into the JavaScript. So first of all, we need to grab all of our elements which we had mentioned in our index.html. So we're going to query the input element, the words element, letters element, sentences element, paragraphs element, reading time element, speaking time element, keywords list element. After we have queried all of our elements and we've put them into variables, we're going to add an event listener on the input element so that we can track all of the text or the words which are being put into our text area, which is the input element here. All right, so our very first function is the handle input. The handle input will contain the handling of the text content for each of these elements, and it will be given to a corresponding function. For the letters element, we'll be giving a function of count letters. For the words element, we'll be given the function of count words, from which we'll take the words num. Counts word will be a function which we'll define later on, which will basically give an object which will contain the number of words and the specific word. Similarly, we'll do the same for the count sentences, paragraphs, reading time, and speaking time, and so on. We'll also do something different with the keywords list element. We are going to make sure that it's going to be cleared. First of all, we should remove all of the previous list elements, and then we're going to again tally or get the new words or the most repeated words in our paragraph. All right, with that general function done, let's get to the first function, which is the count letters. So the count letters is a really simple function. We're going to first of all have a string input to it that will be a parameter. Within that, we're going to store it into our letters. The letters variable will simply be our string, which will be trimmed. The trim function will basically cut out all the white spaces at the start and at the end. Next, we're going to split it with the empty quotation mark. This will basically split all the letters in between. Now, here's the thing. Our letters aren't still mostly full of letters because we're also going to be having this special character. If you'll go and look into the code of whenever we write text, you'll see that whenever we enter a new line, this slash n escape character comes into it. Now we cannot consider this as a letter. Therefore, we have to filter through our letters array, which we had just found above, and we have to filter out this special character. We'll be console.logging that out so that we can see that everything is working as it is. And lastly, we're going to return the letters.length because we just want its length. With that simple function done, we're going to move on to the count words. A pro tip here, many of the functions are almost similar to it, but I'll tell in a minute why one of it is different. Similarly, for the count words, we're again going to take a string and we're going to put that string into the words, and we're going to trim that string from the back and from the forth so that we don't get any extra white space characters. And next, we're going to split using this hieroglyphic regex. Let me explain this step by step. This regex basically rules out all of the slashes and all of the escape characters as I had previously mentioned, and it does not count in the colons or the semicolons or the commas. These are individual characters which we do not want to count as the words. Basically, we're using these as the separators. So whenever the split function sees in the string an escape character, it cuts it from there, and whenever it sees a colon, it again cuts it from there. Otherwise, it would consider it as a whole single word. Again, not all of the words can be considered as a word. We have some of the letters as well in it, such as the letter A. Now that is not considered as a word. So therefore, we're going to again filter through our words and only return those words which have a length that is greater than 1. So basically, we don't want a letter. And next, we're going to return an object. In this object, we're going to return the words, dot length, and the actual words array which we had been going through. All right, next, let's go on to the count sentences. The count sentences, again, is very easy. We take in the string parameter, and we're going to trim the string from the back and forth in order to remove all of the white spaces because we don't want to count that as a sentence. And we're again going to split it using this regex. Again, this regular expression takes out the periods and it splits in the string wherever it sees a period or wherever it sees a quotation mark or wherever it sees a question mark. Now, this is just a limited check on the string. You can increase it as much as you want. And then we're going to filter out through our sentences and we're going to make sure that we're not returning any empty sentences because still this is just a small perspective from the split regex function. You can also expand it as much as you want. Therefore, we will be having some empty space characters. So the easiest way to do it without making the code any more complex is to just rule out all of the empty characters which we have got in the array. Then we're going to just return its length and that will do the job. Now we're going to count the paragraphs. In the paragraphs, we're going to again trim the string, make sure that there is no words and no white spaces in the back and in the forth, and we're going to split it at the slash n character. Remember what I said about this character, which basically is in the string whenever we are starting a new paragraph. So suppose if I'll be writing, as an example, if I'll write over here a sentence, something like that, and I'm going to basically press enter on this. Now, you might not see, but the word editor treats that empty space or that new and line entry as a slash n, which basically returns the carriage of the cursor and brings it to the new line. You will not see this character, but you'll only see it when you review the string from the console. So where does a new paragraph start? Whenever we see this character. So we want to split it at that instance. Again, with this approach, we might get some empty paragraph. I've named this sentence over here. We should name this paragraph. We just rename this as paragraph. All right. So we don't want to return a paragraph that's empty. Then we're going to return the length of that paragraph. Next, we're going to count the reading time. This is a really interesting statistics which most word counters don't have. So in the reading time, it's not actually that complex. We first of all need to have a constant, which is the average words per minute. This can vary. It could be 275 or 250, as much as you'd like according to your personal taste. Next, we're going to do some calculation on the time, and we're going to take the seconds. To find the seconds, we're going to round off the count words which were given, and we're going to take the words number which we have gotten from our count words function, and we're going to divide it by the average words per minute. Now, this will give us the minute, but we want it into seconds. So we're going to multiply it by seconds, and then we're going to get the modulus of it by 60. And that will give us the seconds. Now for the minutes, the process is much easier because we already have the average words per minute. So we don't need to do any conversions. Therefore, we just need to round it off the value of count words word num, which we're going to divide by the average words per minute. Next, we're going to check if minutes is greater than 0. Then we're going to return a string which will contain the minutes and the seconds. Else, we're going to only return the seconds. We absolutely don't want undefined minutes to show up for our user. Similarly, we're going to count the speaking time. Now, in the speaking time, we're going to have the average words per minute to be 180. Again, this can shift around according to personal taste. And we're going to do the exact same calculations which we did for our count reading time function. And the same check which we did in the count reading time function. So that's pretty much the same. The actual difficult function comes over here, which I'll break it down step by step. Now, the tally words function is the actual function which basically takes care of the keywords, which will show up over here in our web page. Currently, we don't see any keywords, but we'll see it in a minute. The rest of these statistics should be now working, so you can check it out. The keywords will basically show up in this manner. So suppose if I'll write some words here, and I'm going to repeat it, then so you're going to see the keywords are going to show up here in a minute. All right. So the tally words function works in this manner. We first of all take the words, and then we take the number of the words and we store it into individual variables. And then we do a single tally on it. Now, for those of you who did not learn algorithms too well, let me break this down into simple words. We're basically going to take a tally, which means that we're going to store the number of occurrences of that specific word which we had found in the string. So we're going to loop over our words array. And for each of the words, we're going to first of all check if we have any index for that word, which means that we're checking if we have any stored index in that tally. If we cannot find the word in the tally, that means that we still haven't put this word into it. So this will basically give us -1. Find index returns -1 if it cannot find the matching predicate. So if that is so, then we're going to make the tally percentage, which will be 1/words num multiply by 100 to get the percentage. And we're going to push into the tally the word with 1, which is the number of its occurrences plus the tally percent. This is the case if a new word is being entered. But what if the word is already in the tally and we want to additionally add +1 into it? Well, for that, we'll add into the else condition, which would be the same tally percentage, except we're going to replace the 1, which we got here, with the actual tally. So we'll need to fetch that tally word. So for that, we got the word index. If the word index is not -1, we're going to check in that tally for the word index, and we want the first item from that word index array. And we can see the first item over here is the number of occurrences. We're going to divide that by the words num and multiply with 100, basic maths here, to get the percentage. Similarly, we're going to again access that first character, the first item in our tally array for a single item, and we're going to increment it by +1, and then we're again going to store it in the tally word index, which means this whole array into it, and we're going to store it like this with the tally word index 0, which will be the basic word on the first tally, and the tally word index and the first element, which will be the occurrence, and the tally percentage, which will be put from this tally variable. So after that, we're going to sort that tally. Now, this part is really important because it depends if you want to sort your tally or you don't want to sort the tally. So in my case, we can sort the tally in a simple manner, that is by using the sort function. We basically want to return all of the items in such an order that the occurrence of the second one must be greater than the first one, so that we can order the tally in an ascending order, which means from the biggest to the smallest or smallest to the biggest. Lastly, we're going to return the tally. You can also remove this, it does not matter. You can put it according to a personal taste. So in the end, using this function, you will be basically getting an array which will look something like this. We have our tally over here. And just for showcase purposes, by the end, if you console.log out the tally, you'll get a array which will look something like this. We might have some words, any kind of word, suppose hello, and I might put over here two. And that's basically how this function is adding the tallies into this tally array. All right, with the most complex function covered, we need to now call another function to set the tally words, because that tally words function was just the logic. Now we want something which hooks into our UI and actually sets those tally words. Well, that's really easy. The set tally words function is used back up in the handle input function. So set tally words basically takes in that tally array, which we are going to pass in through the tally words array. All of these are being set to the event.target.value, which will be the value of our text area. So instead tally words, we basically have that tally array, which we were returning up over here. And we're going to go for each of the tally and we're going to create a new list element and we're going to create a new span element. We're going to set the first element of the span to be the word. And then we're going to create another span element and we're going to add into it our occurrences. Along with that, we're going to concatenate our percentage. We're going to append all of that and then we're going to append it to the list. And now, if we check our application and I'll start writing some word, hello there, you'll see that I'll be getting the keywords and the tally keywords in the correct order. Currently, I've used all of these one times. If I'm going to write hello twice, you'll see that it's ordering with the largest first, largest to smallest, which means over here I'm getting hello two times. And then I can also write like, and you can see I'm also getting that above. Now for the last and the most fun part of this, to make this really stand out, this is a really small helper function. You could have either set it through the index.css, but personally I'll set it through the JavaScript. Basically, we're taking the hue and we're going to set it to 0, okay? Then we're going to set the interval and we're going to increase the hue by +1, and then we're going to change that color variable which we had set before in the index.css right here. And then we're also going to set that for our stats. So we're going to also change the hue for it every 1 second. And now if you're going to check your application, you're going to see that we're getting this nice neon kind of word counter. You can also experiment it by writing any paragraph. And you can see that our statistics are updating accurately. So this was all for today's tutorial. I hope you had enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.